Welcome to Resiliency Redefined. I'm your host, Robyne, and I am thrilled to share with you information about resiliency, well-being, performance, education, business, parenting, and everything in between. I'm committed to joining you each week to talk about these big ideas and bring them into action, habits, tools, strategies, tactics that allow us to finally uncover what it takes to truly be well. And I'm just so excited that you're here. Welcome back to Resiliency Redefined. I had someone ask me a question recently about they hear that people are supposed to have, 8 hours of sleep to be able to maintain health and high performance. And the person said to me, I actually am the absolute best when I've had 4 hours sleep. She said, 4 hours sleep is my sweet spot. And we got into a huge conversation about sleep. And I thought, why not bring some of that learning here today? So today's episode is dedicated to all things sleep. So dive in with me. Let's get going. I want to start by just acknowledging that I get pretty cheesed when I hear the notion of the 5 a.m. club, because there was this big push a wee while ago in business culture, especially with entrepreneurship, that the winners are waking up at 5 a.m. and they're like literally having a whole day before the rest of us even get out of bed. And only winners are the ones, like real winners are the people who get up at 5 a.m. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about that is that they don't tell you that those people ideally should be asleep by like 9 and getting ready for bed by like 7, because we do need 8 hours plus or minus just a wee bit. We do need 8 hours. We were designed physiologically from a biological perspective to sleep a third of our day. That's how we are made. That's where our bodies do so much of the repair and the healing. So what I see though, where the whole kind of misconception about the 5 a.m. club is, there's also this kind of belief that those people are also night owls, right? So like they're staying up till like midnight and then they're getting up at 5 a.m. to work out or do all the things, but that's actually not enough sleep. Now, do I think people are able to function on short intervals of sleep? Some people can, but what we see in the research, the people who are actually functioning at their absolute highest level of performance and greatness, that very small percentage who are able to do that, essentially are like genetically mutated because the majority of people require 8 hours. So we can adapt 100%, and we can adapt to lower sleep levels or less sleep. But the reality is we will not be able to sustain or actually meet our potential. Now, one of the really interesting phenomena in psychology is this idea that you cannot measure the loss of potential. Like there's no way that we can quantify how good someone could be if they were actually doing the things that we know are actually really helpful for us, like 8 hours of sleep. So when we think of the secret ingredient to optimal performance, well-being, success in our relationships, success in our business, success in every dimension of our life, it starts with a solid sleep program. It starts with getting those 8 hours of good sleep. So why is sleep so fundamental to our well-being? Essentially, we are not designed to be on call, awake for extended periods of time. We need time for the brain to take care of itself, to be able to wash out all of those toxins, to be able to restore, to replenish. We also know sleep isn't just about repair and healing. Sleep is also about things like memory consolidation. It's where we learn. It's also a place where we process emotion. So, for example, dreaming, weird side little fact that 85% of people dream in color and apparently 15% of people dream in black and white. I have no idea why I find that so fascinating, but I do. The dreaming practice is actually a form of memory consolidation as well as emotional processing. There's a reason why sleep deprivation is actually used as a form of torture, of a form of manipulation, because we know when people are extremely sleep deprived, they actually show some of the same inhibitions as somebody who's impaired because of alcohol. And when that gets even further along the place of sleep deprivation, we can see that it can induce mental health illnesses. We can see that it impacts depression, anxiety. And then there's the other whole gamut of the physiological pieces that start to erode. So, for example, when you are under rested, okay, so when you're not getting enough sleep, there's actually a correlation between weight and appetite. So there's a hormone in our brains that's actually called leptin, and it is a natural appetite regulator. Okay, some people call it appetite suppressant. I would say it's more of a regulator. And the leptins, when we actually don't get enough sleep, those actually start to decrease, which means we have really big cravings for fast energy sources, i.e., sugars, i.e., anything that's going to give us, whether it be sodas or candies or anything. It's like, you aren't hungry, but you're looking for something because the body is looking for a quick energy source. And that's why we crave those things. We crave carbohydrates. And again, most of us, when we're reaching for carbohydrates, we're not reaching for the berries and the fruit and the, complex carbohydrates, sorry, and like our breads. We're literally reaching for the bag of Skittles or Smarties or Rockets or Sour Patch Kids. Zero judgment. It's stress behavior. It is not misbehavior. So again, it also helps with that regulation of our bodies in terms of how we fuel itself. So for example, we see that when you are under 8 hours of rest, your cravings are through the roof. And to kind of make matters worse, our thinking is also impaired. Like sleep deprivation, it involves that impaired thinking, right? That same notion that sleep deprivation is like somebody being drunk. So, what that means is that our decision making about things like healthy choices, or for example, you have a big day tomorrow and you're pretty tired, and for some reason, watching 10 episodes of a show feels better than actually getting a good night's sleep because we're not making good choices. We are experiencing that frontal cortex where we make good choices. It's actually, again, cognitively impaired to the point where it's not helpful. Okay, so I hope I made a case as to why sleep is important. 8 hours is optimal. We do know the few folks who actually can function at like that 4 or 5 hour, they're essentially genetically mutated and good for them. But I would challenge them though, please try and just see what is available to you if you actually start sleeping well, if you actually start getting the rest that you need, because we adapt. But just because we adapt doesn't mean it's serving us well. It means that we are coping, we are surviving, but perhaps we might not be in that place of growth, of excellence. So, okay, a few kind of other key ideas about sleep I'd love you to think about is that there are multiple stages of sleep. And lots of folks love to talk about, deep sleep, that REM sleep. That is where we process a lot of emotion. But there's another phase of sleep that I think that gets overlooked. And that is the piece where the brain decides it's me time. Okay, so we're not in deep sleep yet. So this would be N3 before deep sleep. And the brain starts to wash out all of those toxins, all of those byproducts, all of those leftover proteins from just living and being alive. So, wakefulness, being awake, requires enormous amounts of energy, right? Just think about all of the moving parts that we're facilitating. So, what happens is there's essentially a byproduct, right? There's a byproduct to this. And then what happens is when we think about it, it's the lymphatic system will then start to wash out all of those toxins. Okay. So that adenosine will start to arise when we are awake. And then when we go into sleep and three sleep, it's going to wash it all out. Now, here's just a little fun fact. If you've ever woken up and you feel groggy, like you feel like gross and groggy and just don't feel great, there's a very good chance that you were awoken. Is that a word? I think so. You woke up in the middle of the adenosine flushing cycle. Okay, so that brain detox is getting rid of all that kind of all the toxins. And if you wake up and you feel groggy and gross, chances are it's like you got halfway through the process. No different than, for example, if you're like opening a dishwasher that's still running and you're like, oops, it's running, and you close it. I don't know if it actually ever kind of gets back into its flow state. Anyway, why does all of this matter? The research shows that that buildup of toxins is like what the new research is showing is that that's correlated with some diseases such as Alzheimer's disease. And right now, two-thirds of people being diagnosed with Alzheimer's are women. And the argument is, or how they're making sense of it, is that this population of women specifically are so sleep deprived for so long that it's actually creating this illnesses within our brain. So your sleep matters. Washing out those toxins in your brain are so important, especially for women. Okay. So another thing that I want you to think about is we want to go through a sleep cycle, for example, is we think about it as like approximately like 90 minutes to go through all of them. And we will go through a series of sleep cycles over the course of the night. Now, if you wake up naturally, right, when there's just that kind of natural wakefulness, usually that means you've come to an end of a sleep cycle and then you'll fall back into sleep, probably without even realizing it, and you'll start another cycle. Now, why I share that with you, if you think about it this way, if you wake up in the morning, okay, and it's within 90 minutes of when your alarm clock is going to go off. Okay, so hear me out on this. Let's say you naturally kind of come to a wakefulness and it's about 6 o'clock and your alarm clock is set for 6:30. My invitation is get out of bed. Absolutely get out of bed, because otherwise, if you hit snooze and you go back to sleep, there's a really good chance that you're going to wake up in the middle of that sleep washing cycle, which means you're going to feel groggy. You're going to feel super gross all day long because you're walking around with like a half washed out brain, which feels a lot like brain fog. It feels a lot like fogginess, as we said, but also just like harder to like retrieve information, harder to regulate emotion, harder to be able to engage in meaningful conversation and connection because we're just a wee bit irritated, right? We're not operating on all clean, good cylinders, so to speak. So getting up, if you naturally wake up close to your alarm clock within 90 minutes, I'm going to encourage you to get up. Now, you might say, okay, Robyne, if I get up when that happens, I might not be getting my 8 hours. Granted, that's fair, but there's things that we can do to help repair and catch up. And it's about napping behavior. There's two types of naps. Number one is what we call a traditional power nap, and it's just 20 minutes. And all you need to do is set an alarm and like for 20 minutes. And all you're going to do is just monotask. Single task focus. So have nothing other than that alarm. Close your eyes. You will not sleep for those 20 minutes, not all of them. You might even fall asleep just for the last 2 or 3 minutes. But what the research shows is that when you get up after those 20 minutes, you will have 4 to 5 to even 6 hours of additional clean energy, and it will not impact your bedtime sleep behavior. Okay, that 20-minute power nap, it won't impact it as long as you have it, again, in that block of 20 minutes. And likely, ideally, like you'd want to make sure to be doing it a few hours like before actual bedtime. Okay, so between like, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, like that could be a really sweet spot to do some recovery work with napping. Now, that's if you need energy. And why you want to get up 20 minutes is because you don't want to run the risk of going into that adenosine wash cycle, right? We don't want to go into that when our lymphatic system gets washing things out, which is why we do 20 minutes. If you want to biohack it, if you have to, let's say, travel and you're feeling a wee bit jet lagged, a strategy is to have a cup of coffee right before you close your eyes for 20 minutes. And by the time the caffeine kicks in, which actually doesn't give you energy, it blocks your tiredness. Okay, so coffee doesn't give us energy, but the caffeine does. It blocks our receptors that register that we're tired. So have that cup of coffee, close your eyes for 20 minutes. We call it a nappuccino. And then when you wake up that 20 minutes later, you're going to have even more energy and you'll have more mental focus and clarity, and it can actually help interrupt that brain fog. Now, that's not an everyday strategy, my friends. That's one just to have in your back pocket. If, for example, you have to do a task in the evening, again, if you're navigating jet lag, or perhaps you have a keynote at nighttime and you usually do keynotes during the morning. And you, so I know yesterday, for example, I had a wee little nappuccino, not an everyday practice, but it definitely allowed me to deliver a nighttime keynote and workshop. Okay, so that's a power nap. The other nap, this one is so special. This is when your heart needs a rest, when you're just feeling the weight of the world, when it's emotionally hard. And that's a 90-minute nap. And that's when you go through a full sleep cycle. So that's going to give you multiple additional hours of energy. And this isn't an everyday thing. This is just perhaps maybe you can have an extra little 90-minute nap on the weekend. Or if you have an afternoon where that would make sense, just to get a wee bit of an extra sleep cycle in. And what that nap will do, again, it'll give you more energy, but the research shows that it also increases our empathy, our compassion, and our communication skills. And that's a heart nap. It's just when we just need to be a little bit more tender, give ourselves just a little bit more care. That's a 90-minute heart nap. And I think having one of those a week is part of really good protocols to be able to maintain emotional well being. So having a heart nap. Okay, a few other ideas. Let's say you're like, okay, Robyne, how do I improve my sleep? What are some other things that I can be thinking about? I know you're not going to love this. I totally get it. We got to get the cell phones out of the bedroom. Now, this is why. Our cell phone is like, gosh, it's not even a phone anymore. It's literally like this like microcosm, this ecosystem of stress, deadlines, responsibility. It is also used for connection. I get that. But there's a lot of negative kind of things that we're carrying around in those phones. And what happens is our brain isn't able to actually fully relax when there is a source of threat and stress right beside us. Okay, just think about that. You would not go to sleep with a tarantula on your nightside table. You would not go to sleep with a snake on your nightside table. Probably not. Maybe somebody does, but that's a whole other thing. But like, just think about it. This little box, this little, this device is actually a bit of a stressor. And it, because again, it's like, gosh, the amount of work that that little device like represents. And then you're trying to put it right beside your head. So I don't think your nervous system can ever really like down regulate when there's a stressor in such close proximity to you. Now, the argument I hear people say is, Robyne, it's my alarm clock. My friends, literally go to a local store or Amazon. You can buy an alarm clock for like $10. You do not need to use your phone as an alarm clock. So getting a break, putting it in another room, leaving it downstairs. And yes, there's that other part of the research that talks about the magnetic frequencies. There's a lot of things, but also it's like enormous amount of effort and willpower to literally have this source of all of the information in the universe right beside you. Like scrolling is so easy. Now, if you had to like, if you woke up in the middle of the night and you had to go like downstairs or to another room to access that phone to scroll, chances are you're not going to do it. Heck, half the time we don't even like get out of bed if we have to use the restroom, right? Like, why are we fighting with ourselves? But nevertheless, getting a break from that device is going to really impact your sleep. The other big idea I want you to think about, I'm not so concerned about when you go to sleep as much as I am about when you wake up and what you do as soon as you wake up. So, as soon as you wake up, my invitation before you start worrying about your day is a practice that I have, cultivating gratitude, is just literally as soon as I'm awake, hand on my heart and just say thank you. Thank you that you get another day. Start your day in a place of just reverence and appreciation that you are here and that you have a whole day ahead of you. So when I first come into consciousness, the first thing I do is a hand on my heart and I say thank you 3 times. And then I get outside. What that does, and it doesn't even have to be bright and sunny, but the sooner we go outdoors, it starts the clock to let us know that we essentially have 16 hours of awakefulness. Okay, 16 hours of being awake with, again, jobs, roles, responsibility, gathering food, looking after our needs, recoveries, all the things. We have 16 hours. And what happens as we get to closer to the end of the 16 hours, our body is naturally going to start to re regulate and prepare itself for rest. So thinking about our days in these 8-hour blocks, right? So 8 hours of, work, getting up, doing 8 hours of facilitating our life, whatever that looks like, and then 8 hours of rest and recovery. Okay, my friends, that was a lot coming at you. I have a feeling that sleep needs like a episode 2.0. So perhaps I'll jump in for the next episode to give you even more tips and strategies. But hopefully, we've made the case as to why 8 hours is so important, how you can use some naps to help catch up on that, and some simple practices of disconnecting at nighttime to be able to get good sleep. And yes, I feel like there's other bazillion things I want to tell you. So we'll call it a day there to keep with the idea of these being 20 minutes. I'll join you again next time to give you even more sleep ideas. So I hope that was useful. Take good care, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for listening. Thank you for spending time with this podcast episode today. I hope you found something helpful in Resiliency Redefined. Please feel free to share it with somebody who you might think could benefit. Maybe there was something useful, something in particular that you think you could pay forward. Also, if you have a moment, please feel free to rate and review this podcast wherever you like to listen to your podcast. It means the world to me. And again, thanks for your time. Thank you for your interest. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.